Hi, good morning. It's the Book Traveller. Today I'm in the beautiful northern Italy city of Florence. Never been here before, and what a beautiful place it is. I've just taken a walk along the river Arno and found this nice little garden here. It's called Giardino Martin Lutero, Martin Luther Garden, and sits just alongside the Arno with some beautiful buildings either side. You can imagine the typical uh, Florentian architecture with multicolored orange, yellow, creams, beautiful buildings. It was a bit of a misty start, and the sun's starting to come out, so the colour of those buildings, which I'll hope to show you later, will come out. I've taken a seat to continue reading The Sanctuary, and we've just been through chapter 17. Ben had been giving another tour of the island with Pemberley, him testing him to find what he thinks about Pemberley and find out expressions so he can paint him later, which is. But he just sat down to dinner and meeting some new people. So let's find out what happens there and how the painting progresses in his new studio. So chapter 18. I was between one of the newcomers and Bianca that night. Pemberley had Angela Knight at his right hand and Munro at his left. I had no chance to thank him for the studio before the meal began, but he gave me a brief look and raised an eyebrow as if acknowledging his sleight of hand. From the lectern he warned the assembled islanders to return tomorrow, adding that there would be an announcement made, a substantial one, about our future here. His closing refrain of "We're building it" was followed by a buzz of conversation. As he said those three words, I could have sworn he glanced at me with a flicker of delight, as if only he and I knew he might have been alluding to the studio. I spent most of the meal talking to Bianca. In response to an inquiry about how she had spent her day, she replied vaguely that she had been doing some reading. I again received the strong impression that there was almost nothing here for her to do, and I remembered thinking the other day that her decision to spend the time giving me a tour had mostly been a relief to her. Not that she was difficult to talk to, quite the reverse. She had a powerful curiosity about my life on the mainland, how many homes there were in my building, how many people in those homes, what my parents had done, how I had come to discover painting, and on it went. She gave me the impression she hardly knew how life functioned on the mainland, but as Pemberley's child, of course, she could hardly be expected to know very much at all about normal life. Every so often I noticed Pemberley surveying us with amusement. There was little group discussion tonight. The two islanders to my left sat enthralled and said nothing unless spoken to directly. Knight stayed moody and silent. Only once did a single subject dominate the table, and when it came in the form of a sentence spoken by Pemberley. "You don't know that." The words were loud enough to temporarily silence all other conversation. He was addressing Bianca, who had clearly said something to displease her father. "I'd been speaking to one of the newcomers and had missed a comment that riled him. And even if you did know," he continued, "what gives us the right to wipe out every last fish and bird and mammal and crawling thing? What makes that the right thing to do? I simply meant it doesn't seem likely to me that everything would be wiped out. You yourself said how resilient life is. Bianca, there is so little we know about the situation. You remember Cuvier? Angela, have I mentioned Cuvier at this table before?" Knight nodded, surveying Bianca mildly as she did so. "I think you have, John." In that instant I saw Knight's unforgiving side, the part of her that would earn and keep her place in Pemberley's company no matter what it required. Cuvier was a French scientist who invented extinction, invented the notion of it, I mean. Before him, there was no idea it could ever happen. We drove whole species from this earth before we even realized we were doing it. When he first proposed that could delete an entire animal, he was mocked. But he was right. And now you suggest this earth needs none of our help. "I'm terribly sorry, John. I must have misunderstood." Bianca's face was a mask of pain. For a moment I found myself thinking how foolish of her to displease him, before wondering where the thought had come from. It's not a question of misunderstanding, it's a question of possibility. We, our whole species, stand on a bridge so terribly precarious that the chances of our making it across are almost none. The worst part is, we ourselves wore away in the support as we crossed. And now, here we are, standing in the middle, surrounded by a peril we created. The table had fallen silent. If our species survives just one more century without killing everything off, then a great upland of potential awaits us. How short a time a century is, a fraction of a heartbeat in the life of this world, and yet right now we are at the point of the very greatest danger. If we keep hacking, we will all drop into the ravine of our past, and the worst part of this is we are not crossing this bridge alone. We carry with us the fate of every other living on Earth. You remember last week what we said about elephants? Bianca nodded, still clearly mortified at having ruined the mood, apologizing with the gift of her full attention. Her father continued, 50 years ago nobody thought the elephants could die. We were wrong. So that's the work of this place, to find a way for all of us to cross the bridge together. This is our task, and I will continue, even if it kills me. How does that fit with eradications like the rats? I hadn't intended to ask, but I knew somehow he would have an answer. You're a creative, Ben, are you not? I nodded. Have you ever made a mistake on a canvas so grievous you had to start again from nothing? I nodded again. Do you think there is an inconsistency in your approach and mine? Man made a mistake by transporting animals to places they would never have reached. When we have settled the Pacific Islands, a tenth of the world's bird species were driven to extinction, thanks to us. Think of the Earth we could have had, and look at the world now. We botched the canvas. Now we can mend it. Hence the destruction of the rats. Does that make sense? Yes, it does. They came back, though. Bianca was speaking, obstinate despite her earlier reprimand. They came back 2 years ago. We got rid of them again, Knight said. I just don't understand how they get back in, Bianca replied, mildly. It seems so unlikely to me, given how strict things are here. Almost as if Angela cut across her. Rats are clever, and sometimes invasive species are given a tiny foothold and work their way in. She looked at me, and it takes a lot of effort to root them out later. Pemberley spoke again, calmer now. Angela's right. We got rid of them again, and in future, he waved his fork, how much we will do, we'll be able to. How much? There was a general sense of a sermon ending. Most people went back to their own conversations, but for a few minutes I couldn't help observing how he and Angela Knight talked, almost conspiratorially, their heads together. I wasn't the only one. Bianca was observing them too, and the corners of her mouth were dark with wine. The rest of the meal passed without incident. Afterwards, Pemberley excused himself to walk among the islanders still at their long tables. Knight drifted away too. Bianca leaned in towards me. Come for a walk. There's something I want to talk about. Outside the hall, groups of residents were gathered beneath the bulbs that glowed a gentle blue. The sky had darkened almost to night during the meal, and Bianca and I slowly walked to the perimeter. I spoke first. What was that argument really about? I was trivializing the situation on the mainland, or the rest of the world, really. I don't blame him for pointing out how silly I sounded. At least she saw sense eventually. There was that small, calm voice again, and the one that had sided with Pemberley against his daughter during the meal. We'd been receiving dozens of ships a month, Bianca said. It's not surprising one of them could have a pair of rats on board. Anyway, it's all just ego stuff. Angela's meant to be in charge of biological control. Knight had taken the opportunity to belittle Bianca during the conversation. I remembered, subtly enough that the others might not noticed it. Outside the hall, there were stone seats, massive granite rocks, with their innards scooped and smoothed to convert them into comfortable hollows. We sat in one, and I spoke first. This place just seems to work. It's extraordinary. It's not so hard when you divide up the labour. The first main responsibility is the general smooth running of the place from day to day, ordering new solar cells, supervising shoring up work at the docks, arranging welcomes for new residents. Cara's been overseeing all that. Sounds like an enormous job. She's very talented. I felt pride then, pride in Cara's knowledge and her work. The other thing is overseeing the final progress of the biovaults and making sure they are paid for. That's Knight's job, the job of her life really. It was finished a couple of weeks ago. The biovaults, the stores of life, every single species of flora and fauna on the planet, preserved, logged, you name it. But that would take thousands of people to do, surely. John has thousands of people. Most of the work happens either on the mainland or in the international branches, but it's all been leading here. How can he afford it? He's even wealthier than you imagine, and he's willing to spend it all to make this place self-sufficient. Once he's done that, it won't need wealth. It will stand on its own. He says it's the equivalent of spending your fortune educating a child so they can live for themselves. Did he do that with you? Bianca looked uncomfortable. I would have thought you'd be happy to learn that. He's a self-destructing billionaire. I had to admit that the idea of a great well of money being emptied and spread across the island was beautiful in a way. But my question had made her look miserable, and I changed the subject. Knight doesn't like me, does she? She doesn't like many people. She and John had some big dispute about the direction of the company recently, but neither of them is talking about it. Well, he's in charge, not her, and she's coming to the end of her work now. He wants someone with energy, someone other than me, she sighed. Is there something he's going to be launching soon? Launching? Bianca looked guarded suddenly. Like what? I told her what I had overheard at Pemberley's discussion with Knight in the chapel this morning. Legacy, early trials. I wished I remembered more of it, and it was connected to what you said tonight, the big announcement tomorrow. She shrugged. No idea. Any more questions? I mentioned my schooling to him at Hillcrest. Christ, Ben, why? I didn't see the harm. Is it really that private? His childhood is off limits even to me. God, it's like you want him to evict you. I wondered whether she was protecting her father's childhood the way he must have protected hers. After a minute of silence, I remembered she had brought me out after dinner for a reason. You said you had something you wanted to discuss. She paused, and then spoke in a rush, as though forcing the words out was the only way to get them said. Cara's not on the mainland. What? I phoned the mainland estate this afternoon. She's not there, according to them. Not at any of their offices, and she wasn't reported to be in the field either. The company over there doesn't know where she is. That's impossible. Your father said. What had Pemberley said? Did John ever actually say she was on the mainland estate? He said she'd be back soon. Where else should she be? I don't know, Ben, but they checked the manifest of ships for me. There's no record of her disembarking in the last several weeks. Not in the time since I last saw her on the island. Maybe she's still here. She can't be. I looked out at the dark trees. Was Cara there, watching us, even now? I don't know, Ben. I just wanted to tell you. You have a friend in me. If she's not here, or on the mainland estate, then where was she? I felt so exposed in that moment, so keen not to think about Cara being missing, untraceable, that I had to change the subject. I would think about it when I was alone. There's something I want to talk to you about. I dug in my pocket and held the journal out to her. It's a notebook belonging to the man who lived here before me. Thomas, I think he was called. Bianca's expression changed. She grabbed the book from me and leafed through it. You shouldn't have this. The maintenance people cleared his possessions. Well, he hid it. Why would they do that? Whenever someone leaves, their remaining belongings are removed. Did you know Thomas, Bianca? She did not look up, but she nodded slightly. I reached out and took the notebook back from her. It's pretty strange stuff. I don't think he was entirely stable. It was the wrong thing to say because she seemed upset. Of course he wasn't. He had a lot of odd ideas. God knows where they came from. Perhaps his disease was kicking in early. It was really sad, really. He was so convinced that this place was malign, it drove him out of his wits. She reached out. You shouldn't have that, Ben. I knew him. I can take it. A deep voice cut across our conversation. I hope you don't mind me joining you. Pemberley had appeared by the bench, the round filament from the light above making a reflected halo on his shining head. We stood. I held the notebook in my hand, unable to conceal it. Bianca, I'm sorry for speaking intemperally in there. I just thought I'd been making such progress in articulating why this place matters. And he shrugged as though he couldn't be responsible for losing his temper. Then a disciple or a daughter proved block-headed. Bianca was all forgiveness, blushes, apologies herself. She clearly didn't get such attention from her father often, and a corner of my mind wondered whether the scene of a father caring for his misguided daughter was being staged for my benefit. Pemberley turned to me. Like the studio? I'm speechless. I don't know what to say. Cara's not here. Cara's missing. Where is she? But I kept silent, and he did not notice the look on my face. How did you do it? Get into my home, I mean, in the city. We have 10,000 people working in the city, Ben. We can take the best of the old world and graft it straight into the new one. It's remarkable. He shrugged, clearly delighted by the praise. Then he leaned over, and before I could tighten my fingers, plucked the book away from me. He turned it in his large hands, feeling the ersatz leather it was bound with. What's this? I swallowed. I would strongly prefer you not to look into it, if that's all right. I must have put a bit of authority into my voice, because he paused, his hands folded around it as if in prayer, thumbs poised to open it. And why not? They're very rough preliminary sketches. Blame an artist's superstition. It's bad luck for a subject to see himself before it's finished. Pemberley paused for a second, then glanced up at me through his thick eyebrows and grinned. I wouldn't want to place a curse on your portrait. Here. Thank you. Even when the book was stowed, I worried Pemberley would turn and insist on seeing it after all. When I examined my feelings later, I realised I'd been afraid not that he would see the scrawlings of poor mad Thomas, but that he would send me away from him and the world he was building here. Even then, even in a new fog of worry about Kara, the thought of banishment had filled me with fear. Pemberley ignored my sickly look. Well, we can improve on sketches, I'm sure. First session tomorrow. 7 all right? Good. He turned, and the cool white of his shirt bobbed away through the gathering dusk to the edge of the open hub. Bianca let out a breath I hadn't realised she was holding, and nodded at the book in my pocket. I'd get rid of that if you want a future here. She walked away after him, and my fingers tightened around it. Back at the cottage, I fell asleep almost immediately, but my dreams were disturbed, and I woke after a few hours and crept downstairs, trying not to disturb Joanna and Francis. I poured myself water and looked out over the island from a side window on the landing outside my bedroom. From this aspect, the island was mild, and the trees above the hex were as still as a landscape painting. The cry of a distant animal cracked the air. For a moment, a strange sensation came over me, as if I was looking down at myself from a great height, many miles away. I saw myself standing on the outer rind of the planet, keeping on its surface by the most casual of forces, the coincidence of gravity. I sensed the silk-thin layer of the atmosphere, the layer that contained every living thing we'd ever known, and how far we'd gone towards its destruction. How odd that I'd ever considered the city the best place for me, and what strange joy in the prospect of a life here with Kara, painting the most important group of people in the world, as if only I knew where she was. She was missing. She was not on the island, not on the mainland. If Bianca was to be trusted at any rate, and I had not taken the chance to ask Pemberley about it, why not? Pemberley had explained about Ladd, the journalist. After all, Ladd's widow must have mistaken my innocent inquiry for something more menacing, and Pemberley himself cared for my welfare so much he had summarily fired the men who beat me on the road here. Better still, he was starting to see the purpose of my work. I could tell that I had intrigued him with my conversation today, and I knew that over the coming weeks I would prove to him what a painting could do. Yet still I didn't know where Kara was. Enough. Time for sleep, to be refreshed for tomorrow's painting session. If Kara came back tomorrow, she would find me restored by the spirits of the island. There was no thought back in the darkness of the bedroom, but I did see something else after a while. An anthill as high as my head. A stream of shining black carapaces circled it, collecting food for their queen. I leaned toward it and began pulling away chunk by chunk of wet, dark matter until the colony was exposed before me. There, in all its pomp, surrounded by devoted attendants, was a beast I had never seen before. It was no ant, nor was it a caterpillar or a grub. It was a new, circular beast with 100 tiny arms. When I tried to pinch out its life, it sank its small teeth into the tip of my thumb and made me another of its slaves. Chapter 19 next. Wonder what it's going to be like in the morning, sitting for that first painting. I hope you're enjoying the sanctuary with me. As I say, here in Florence, the sun's about to pop out behind this tree. I'm going to take a walk into town and see what other sights I can see and hopefully read some more to you from there. Well, have a nice day.